Fall at Equestria, Ditzy Chronicles, Chapter 3, Under New Management, Part 2. With Gizmo's gift now in May's possession, she and I made our way out of Ponyville. It was going to be a long trek to Manhattan on hoof, but May was confident that we could make it in under a week. That would have been a lot easier if she let me fly us some of the distance, but she was still adamant about staying on the ground. I laughed inwardly, amused that some pony who had been on the battlefield would have been afraid of something as pedestrian as heights. To pass the time on the long trip, we conversed with each other, mostly about what our lives had been before the war, and what we hoped they could become now, as the war was effectively over. May had been working for her family's clinic before it was folded into the Ministry of Peace. Much like my delivery services had been employed by the Ministry of a number of times, it was kind of strange that both of our cases involved us doing the same thing before and during the war, just under different circumstances. Our conversation passed some time, but not nearly as much as we'd have liked. When we ran into things to talk about, May tuned her pitbuck radio into her bitbuck, tuning it to the MASEBS frequency. However, instead of hearing Magpie's usual broadcast, a different voice greeted us, that of a younger-sounding stallion. "Greetings, every pony. As you probably can tell, I am not Lieutenant Colonel Magpie. As of now, the MASEBS is now under new management. My name is Turntable. I am just a civilian. However, I am also the only other pony here who knows how to operate this equipment. My aunt showed me how most of the type of broadcasting and recording equipment worked since I was a little colt. Now then, as for why Miss Magpie is no longer here, an unfortunate situation has befallen us here at the Manhattan MAS hub. On top of the obvious, although the magical defenses of the building protected us from the brunt of the blast, what we didn't know was a number of small holes in those defenses were letting radiation leak into the tower. One of those holes was located here, in the emergency broadcast room. Unfortunately, by the time we realized we fixed the problem, Magpie, as well as a few others, had already taken fatal doses. I hope you will all join me in a moment of silence for the brave mayor who stayed up here, trying to bring you all the truth of this disaster." May and I stopped and bowed our heads, having shared respect for Magpie and her attempts to reach out to what remained of Equestria. We stayed silent for a few moments, only resuming our trek when the voice of Turntable resumed his broadcast. "In honor, I will continue to bring you the truth, no matter how bad it hurts. This brings me to my next bit of news. Prance and Bitley have both been confirmed as being destroyed by megaspells. We still don't have any other word about Canterlot or the princesses, so if any ponies out there listening and can send us a message with the information, we will be eternally indebted to you." May and I shared a knowing yet anxious look. Now then, as things look bleak, I remember something my auntie used to always tell me. My aunt's name was Vinyl Scratch, who many of you know as radio personality DJ Pond 3. She always told me that tough times was easier with good friends and good music. I don't know if I can be a good friend since I'm stuck in the middle of a megaspell blasted city, but music I can at least do. I don't have much of a selection, just some of my personal collection that happened to be here. I hope it helps. Turntable's voice cut out, giving way to a song. I recognized it, as just about any pony who listened to popular music at the time. It was Sweetie Belle's beautiful songstress face of public relations of Stapletech, and as Gizmo told us, now the overmayor of Stable 2. This song was a particularly sorrowful melody, and hearing it in the gloom, post-Megaspell Equestria made my heart ache. The lyrics seemed eerily appropriate. How did this happen? What have I done? About 2.5 days after departing from Ponyville, May and I found ourselves back in the proximity of the Pie family rock farm. We decided to stop and check on Blinky Pie, and also refill our canteens from her well. When she saw us, she jumped a good foot in the air. I couldn't really blame her. With our hair gone, May and I did look rather freakish. Thankfully, it didn't last long, and we were able to stock up on water. We told Blinky about our successful trek to Ponyville, and she was glad to hear it. Unfortunately, we still couldn't convince her to depart from the old rock farm. We stayed the night at Blinky's place before resuming the trek. Sleep I found didn't seem to do much for me anymore. I never seemed to feel that much better afterwards, and most of the time my sleep was riddled with horrible nightmares. May seemed to be the same, only sleeping a few hours at a time herself, but didn't mention anything to me. I suspected she was mentally berating herself for ignoring one of the most important parts of healthy living, being a medical pony through and through. Another strange thing I found as we traveled was the hunger no longer seemed to have the same pang it used to. May and I had been eating sparingly to conserve supplies we had brought with us, but for some strange reason, it always seemed to be rather more than enough. That said, I would have given just about anything for a fresh muffin. The way they were, I felt that I can get within a couple days before I felt like eating again. Whether that was actually true, I couldn't say. Also, May also insisted on 2 daily meals, even if they were small. Perhaps the strangest thing about all of the travels, once again, was the lifelessness of the once vivid nation of Equestria. Any plant life we came across was black, sickly, or shriveled, owling the radiation and megaspell fallout. All animal life seemed to have ceased, or at least gone into hiding. Pony life as well was given the number of places that had suffered the megaspell hits. That was becoming less and less shocking. Altogether, the lack of life spoke to me even more than the prospect of seeing death in front of me again. It was through the land itself was sterile. May's pip buck was constantly picking up background levels of radiation. Periodically the levels would spike, but never to the levels we had already experienced on the day of the apocalypse. As soon as the word crossed my mind, I shuddered. I really didn't want to think of that day like that. Really, though, what else could I call it? Holocaust? Doomsday? Fit. But they had the same problem. Putting the thought aside, I pondered the minor radiation we were being exposed to. It felt like the first day, when my insides had felt 8 kinds of wrong and my head and my stomach had been turning cartwheels. It felt like a little sitting in front of me on an open fireplace, cozy but potentially dangerous if you sat too close. May and I had been following the rails along the countryside, for the sake of taking the quickest and presumably safe route to Manhattan. We ended up passing through the junction north of Shattered Hoof. That made me think of Raider, and I wonder if any pony had been sent to investigate the stockyard yet. I doubt it. It was sadly more likely that the ponies inside either escaped or died. There were also other more horrible possibilities that I didn't want to contemplate. 5 days after leaving Ponyville, it turned out that the background radiation exposure was indeed taking a toll on us. May and I started experiencing cellular necrosis of epidermal tissue, which was just her medical terminology to say our skin was dying and flaking off. Although we hadn't been getting sick, May had each of us drink a packet of Radaway in an attempt to stave off the effects. It didn't work, as the next day our skin was looking even worse. I even lost a few more feathers. After our skin started to decay, May and I quickened our pace towards Manhattan. As we drew closer to the city, we began to find corpses of ponies who had died of burns or radiation poisoning after the blast of the bale fire that destroyed the city. I thought back to the Pegasus mare who I had seen dead after the Cloudsdale blast. I wondered why she had died when I had not. Not a quarter mile ahead had been spared. Was it luck, willpower, or more likely, I was cursed to bear witness to these horrors? May stopped abruptly as we came into the suburb of Fetlock. She looked around as though she was searching for something. She fell to her haunches after a few moments and hung her head. "What's the matter?" I asked, trotting up to her. I sat down next to her and placed a featherless wing now across her shoulders in a pseudo-hug. "Somewhere in the suburb is Stable 29. Not the response I had been expecting. "I guess I forgot to mention this too," muttered May. "My brother and my nephew were slated for a spot there. I was worried about them, knowing how dangerous the world was, but I never actually considered a total megaspell holocaust possible until he told me about his acceptance. Once again, I found myself painfully inexperienced in the matter regarding family. No siblings, no children, not even a status of honorary aunt from a friend's children. Shouldn't you be glad then?" I asked, trying to be supportive as if I could manage. "If they're in the stable, then they were spared of all this." May shook her head and sighed again. "I slipped out of touch with Buckbright about a week before the Holocaust. I was really busy. The MOP never stopped having ponies to heal and provide therapy for, and it only ever seemed to get worse. I don't even know if he and his son made it into the stable. They might not even gotten a chance to how suddenly it happened. Is this why you gained instant to having Gizmo find out with the rest of the stables? It made sense now that I had more time to think about it. So then just general concern for those who had survived thanks to the stable. There was something personal thrown into the mix. May nodded, a few tears slipping from her eyes. Yes, it seems a bit selfish, given how much every pony has suffered. But I just want to know that they're safe. If I could know for sure, I'd have something to carry hope for. Those damn zebras killed every other ounce I had. I added a foreleg to the wing I had over May's shoulder, drawing back into a hug. Don't worry, I said, trying to comfort her, though with less stellar conviction. Equestria isn't going to stay like this. It may take a while, but we'll get back on our hooves. I sure hope you're right, sighed May. May and I continued to the suburb of Fetlock, the skyline of Manhattan metropolis looming up in front of us. The massive skyscraper that comprised the city jutted into the air like a great black bone. As we drew closer, corpses were replaced by skeletons, and eventually piles of ash incinerated down to the bone by the heat of the sickly green flames of the balefire bomb. After the megaspell went off, the city was reduced to a shadow of its former self, blackened with the ash of countless cremated citizens. It also made May's pitbuck click wildly at the radiation that had settled over the city. Before going any farther, May's horn lit up as she cast her reddish radiation shield around us. Almost immediately, the clicking in her pitbuck died down, although it was never completely silenced. We each drank another rat-away potion as a precaution, and May requested that I keep the conversation to a minimum, avoiding losing focus. I understood, not wanting to get cooked any further by the radiation, but I did enjoy the idea of a silent trip through the spooky ruins of the blasted city. Thankfully, May didn't either. Turning on her pitbuck's radio at a low volume, we came to the tail end of the song, sung by Sweetie Belle's turntable selection of songs consisted of a dozen at most. We have heard most of them already, at least a dozen times over, on the trip here. However, turntable always seemed to find bits of news to place between songs. That was Sweetie Belle once again. Sorry if it's starting to get old, but it's the best I can do. Now then, I've got a bit of news for you. I've been hearing rumors of ghosts here in Manhattan ruins. Pony souls who have not realized they died in the blast, wandering the ruined cities and trying to go about their former lives. Naturally, that notion is ridiculous, but there's something stirring down there. A few witnesses' accounts claim that zombie ponies have been spotted on the outskirts of Manhattan. They have the shapes of ponies, but look like shambling corpses, hairless, flesh-rotten, and vacant-looking. These ponies really do seem like zombies from an old horror flick. Now then, what are they really? Ponies suffering from extreme radiation poisoning? Mutants? Both, sneered May. Her voice seemed a bit more gravelly than before it had. Like she had a sore throat, I let out a soft chuckle, then continued listening to Turntable. Perhaps they're safe from some plague the zebras had set upon, along with the megaspell. Or, this one I doubt personally. Maybe there really are undead ponies risen from the grave to take revenge for their ultimately deaths in the wake of the megaspell holocaust. Now then, while these ponies may look like monsters, none of my witnesses have reported any incidents of flesh or brain eating. That said, they could still be dangerous if they're radioactive or diseased. I recommend caution. But let's not get trigger-happy here. This land has seen enough of that to last an eternity. Turntable moved to another topic, but it was far less interesting than his commentary about the so-called zombies. Do you think he's talking about us? I raised my hoof to throw after I spoke. I also seemed to have some of the roughness affecting my voice. He could be, replied May, not saying anything about my voice, but I doubt it. He said that there were witnesses having been encountered any pony living here since Blinky Pie. More likely, there might be others suffering from this. May paused, unsure of what to call our condition. Affliction? I offered, wanting to keep the conversation and our movement into the city going. I suppose that'll do for now. May pressed her contemplative hoof to her chin. If there are any others going through this, then I should see about coming up with a treatment. I thought it would only be temporary when it was just hair loss, but this... Perhaps you can look into it at the MAS hub. I suggested. Surely they have some research stuff there. I wasn't exactly sure what stuff consisted of, but at least May got the point. Walking through Manhattan was like traversing an urban maze. If May hadn't known the way, I would have gotten lost, having only even traveled through the city by air before. It was made all the worse by the fact that we were once would have been a thriving community of metropolitan ponies, and there were now countless piles of ash. Small green fires still burned in a number of places. It didn't help that the creaking metal collapsed timbers made me jump, fearing that the weakened structures might collapse on us. Even with May's warding spell, the further we went into the city, the more intense the radiation grew. My companion looked uncertain, as though she was regretting deciding to come out here. The glow from her horn would periodically intensify, trying to keep up with the rising radiation levels. It was losing a battle, and I feared that we didn't reach the Ministry Magic Hub soon. We might end up joining the ash that billowed the city. In a worst-case scenario, I might be able to fly out, but I wasn't sure if I trusted my wilted wings to carry May along with me. It seemed that some small miracle we managed to make our way deep enough into the city to reach the MAS hub. As we approached the monolithic building, I could see that it is not weathered in the megaspell blast, so I presumed from the radio broadcast the side of the building facing the center of the city where the megaspell had detonated was scorched black and sagging dangerously. I could just barely see the tip of the radio transmitter sticking out of the building's roof. My lazy eye rolled down, catching several glints of brass beneath the layer of black ash. Looking up, I saw the name on the building, although a number of letters had fallen free. I suspected that the source of the brass beneath my hooves. MNISYFACANSCENE. Near the half-demolished sign, I could see that the tracks of the monorail running into a docking station built on one side of the building. A few stories up from the track, I can see a balcony, the railing of which warped half a ton torn away. What was surprising was that there was a pair of ponies standing on it. There were two of them, each wearing bright yellow radiation suits with pink bands around the foreleg and a butterfly emblem on this flank. The suits were surrounded by a soft yellow glow. Between the two of them, a large rifle sat mounted on the remaining part of the railing. "Well, I'll be," muttered May, drawing my gaze. She looked like she'd be sweating from the strain of maintaining the radiation ward around the two of us. The Ministry of Peace hazmat and radiation suits. They've got built-in radiation ward talismans. It's kind of like making me jealous. I smiled anxiously. "Maybe they'll lend you one." "Maybe," said May cynically. "But once we get inside and become decontaminated, I'm not going anywhere for a while. I'm on the verge of burning out my magic." I thoroughly agreed. I hadn't just spent a few hours maintaining a magical barrier, but I could tell the toll it was taking on May. I wanted her to get all the rest she needed, and more. Sadly, it wasn't meant to be. My lazy eye rolled up on its own accord, landing on the balcony once more. It was just time to see the barrel of the large rifle that was now pointing straight at the two of us. A single shot rang out, echoing across the empty city. Not having time to think, I rammed into May, shoving her away from the line of fire. Startled by the sudden push, May's horn flickered and died. The radiation ward around us vanished instantly. I didn't have much time to think to register the loss of the protection as the shot tore through my right thigh. A gaping hole was made right in my right flank, searing with agony. May and I crashed roughly into an overturned metal cart. I screamed a terrible inequine scream. Current status. Complete ghoulification. Status effect. Your ghoulish appearance causes most ponies to view and think of you as a monster. Your charisma is permanently reduced by 3. However, your ghoulish physiology comes out to be quite unique benefits. Your perception, endurance, and luck are permanently increased by 1, as well as you can last without food or water much longer than regular ponies, and the benefits of the duration of the chems are reduced by half. Warning. As a ghoul, your ludicity will now be monitored. If your ludicity drops below safe levels, you run the risk of turning feral.